Well, first off, of course, I have to thank Carlin and her extraordinary staff for including me, because never in my wildest dreams did I think that this would happen to me. And I will try not to be too emotional about it. All of my family's here, which is also a thrill, but I'm really supposed to talk about the art. My art, which is, you know, I could talk about anybody else's art, not a problem. My own art, that's another thing altogether. But I will try to offer a little insight as to what it is I've been trying to do. I adore nature. I adore gardens and flowers. Flowers were verboten in art school, by the way. I mean, it's like we don't paint flowers here. But I wanted to see if I could find some way to construct them and deconstruct them, sort of like jazz is constructed, because I grew up with jazz. And what happens, of course, is you end up with certain marks and certain motifs that become some sort of gesture or mark that, and I'm wandering off here, but become a gesture or mark that can be repeated, taken apart, turned upside down, twisted, turned, and then put back together. I've had a number of people today say, Goldie, they look like oil paintings. Well, there's actually lots and lots of paintings in one painting, hence the title, Kill Your Darlings, which is very sweetly given to me by my son-in-law, Max, because kill your darlings is a phrase used in the film industry when they have to edit out some beautiful little passage in a movie, in television, in any film. Even if it's exquisite, if it doesn't hold the story together, they can't use it. And I found that that's what was often happening with my paintings. They got really, really busy, and then I covered them all up and got rid of things that I sort of hoped I could hang on to, but they disappear. They're gone. They're under there, but they're gone. If I could impart one thing to you about them, I hope when you look at them that you feel like you are in them. I don't want you to be back somewhere looking at them. I want you to feel like you've found something in the woods, be it a pond, a marsh, a swamp, a cluster of flowers, but I want you to feel like you're in it up to your knees. And maybe you could smell it, because I think a really good painting should apply to more than one sense. That's something I've taken away from you. Yes, the mud between your toes that squelch, or maybe the breeze on your face, something like that. How am I doing? Okay, good, all right. I think my work is informed by my previous career, which is in design, where all you do is draw. You draft, you draw architectural drawings and things like that. So there is drawing in them. It's where a lot of the lines and the marks come from, because for years and years, that's all I did was draw. There's no doubt I've had my influences. I knew and appreciated John Fox, who we used to sell his work here, because he used to create works that were light and dark shadows and then would finish them off by drawing, and I feel like I've done that. So thank you, John. Some of my friends here have probably influenced me too, understanding light and dark, and painting the whole painting. Do the whole thing. Don't just do a little bit. Do it all at once, which seems crazy, but you do eventually learn or find a way to paint all at once. And I really hope that I will, well, I know I am. I've got the studio full of things and I'm continuing to push on and create. But again, it's really a thrill to see all of you here, and thank you.
Well, thank you.
And Peter.
Oh, am I next?
My friend Peter.
Oh, what do I say? Goldie said everything I was going to say. Goldie has been an influence because I've known her for many years now, and we drank a lot of wine together, so she's been a bad influence, which is where I got a lot of the ideas from, you know, all the drinking. But I don't know, I haven't done a talk in a long time. What should I talk about? Well, I can start with the trees, and I have to make sure my story matches, because I've told it enough times now, I think I've got it down, people will believe me. So the trees were started, I started with landscapes. And I was in sculpture. That was my forte. That's what I studied, was sculpture. And I was interested in materials. And I did some work at a museum restoring, I wouldn't say masters, but old paintings. And what was fascinating about the old paintings was not the painting. It was the cracking, varnish, the discoloring, the warping canvases. And so I started looking at the material of that and looking at it in a sculptural sense. So the original works had no images on them. They were just materials that were falling apart. I had some paintings that were quite abstract, sort of minimal. And when I first moved to Montreal, 20-something years ago, maybe more than that, I was on Lachine Canal. And I'd moved from New York. I wasn't unfamiliar with the cold winters in Montreal, but they were beyond my expectations. But it worked in my favor because I would take the paintings, I would put up very thick varnishes, epoxies, whatever I could find, plasters on these paintings and put them out in the back cloistered, the back fenced-in area. And on this one occasion, I would see how the temperature would change. It would expand and contract the canvases and play around, some success, some not. And on one occasion, I'd taken off for about a week. When I came back, Montreal had a huge snowstorm. And the snowplow had piled up all the snow in front of these paintings. And then it, in true Quebec form, the air dried everything else. It was one big ice chunk, and I couldn't get at these paintings. And I had a show coming up, probably like in 2 weeks from that time, and I had to go out there with an axe and a blowtorch to get at these paintings. And the paintings were on canvas, too. So when I finally took the canvases out, the temperature change had aged all of these paintings in a way that distorted them, and I have to say, I lost a few paintings. Some of them didn't get pulled out. And then I restretched them, and then I started working with temperatures and how the temperature changes and expands and contracts with the paint. And again, being in sculpture, I was getting a lot of work part-time through special effects with movies, so I had some connections with that, where I started working with resins, and at their expense. The movies are overpriced because they have artists come in and they use their materials. I'm pretty sure of that one. Anyway, this was a bad John Travolta film. We won't go into that. I should have a credit there. I should give him a credit for some of these paintings because I was using these epoxies, very expensive epoxies that was covering the paintings, and I could tint them, and I could manipulate these resins, and I started working with these, and I started pouring them over these paintings, and I was then connected it with, in French, the vernissage, which is the varnishing, the opening, and before the vernissage, which means the opening, so before paintings would be shown, artists would come in and put a fresh coat of varnish on their painting, and they'd also be drinking and probably some opium and stuff like that too, but it was the old days. And then the paintings would they would look like they were freshly painted. So what they would invariably do is that the paintings didn't sell if they were bad paintings. The paintings would go off to the next salon. And once again, the process was repeated, and the artist would put new varnish on. So I started thinking about the layers and layers of varnishes on paintings would overcome the image and would become an art object in themselves. And often when you restore paintings, it's not the paint, it's the varnishes that have cracked. And so the paintings would become an object with a hidden image within it. And people would, when they would come across the painting, they would question whether the painting was neglected, whether it was old or new, whether it was neglected, whether it got damaged. A lot of other questions were brought into the piece. And then often you would, if you see an old master's painting in a museum and you can see that something's happened to it, and in many cases, things have happened to the paintings with the wars in Europe and whatnot, that there would be a dialogue as towards the art as an object as opposed to the painting as an image. And so, was the painting neglected? Did it get damaged by history? Was it not valuable? In many cases, paintings are delegated to the addict, and they've lost their appeal, and then they're brought back down. So I was interested less so much in the image as the object. And so this is where I started bringing in, with the newer epoxies, it stabilizes the paintings a bit more, so that Carlin does not have to field calls from designers wanting to know why paintings are falling apart over sofas and whatnot. But the resins I use now are far more practical for these purposes, but it still has the same effect where they become mirror-like and they look like layers and layers are the varnishes. And then I could just say with the odd pieces that are thrown in here, which is why I love Oeno Gallery, because you guys will show some of these pieces that are not part of my regular circuit, is the fresco pieces. So I did this one when I was in Berlin, a series, this was a smaller one, a series of larger paintings in fresco, pigments mixed in with the plaster. Same concept, temperature change would fluctuate. I wouldn't put the silicate over top, so it's continually expanding. These have been, no worries, these ones have got silicone on, they're fine. But during an exhibition I had in Berlin and one in London, I did paintings of icebergs, and during the show, because they weren't fixed, the paintings would crack, and then eventually, after a month or 2 months, end up on the ground. They were aware of that. But that was more of a public show, but the idea of the piece having a life of its own after it's created was where I kind of took the work from there. Anyways, I've said too much already, but that's the basics of what these pieces are.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I'm from Sarajevo originally, came to Canada in '96. My English is not the best, so you will use your imagination to understand sometimes. I live in Toronto, in downtown, not but in condo, and when I exit in my garage, we have a door, big door, which at some point somebody needed to fix, I guess, and he left his mark of his hand, dark like this, on a door panel. Every morning when I go out, I see that mark. And I think about cave paintings in Spain and France that people did like 40,000 years ago. And excellent drawings, like you all probably know about them. But what's mostly for me fascinating is that hand image that was enhanced, blowing some kind of pigment to the bone of or some wood part, and then they created image of hand sticking out. And some of them, they have like 10, 15, 50 maybe hands on that wall. And it's dark inside the cage, like kilometers in. I don't know how they did it, like with a torch or something. And they must have great fun doing that. And they've been excited for sure. So time passed and we somehow survived all these animals around us, confronting each other, surviving and trying to work in that field of art, and which I cannot explain. It's just something inside all of us that needs to be to go out. So to make long story short, some of us decided to create a cave outside the cave in the middle of Prince Edward County here. And some artists came and did the hands in the form of my painting or Peter's or Goldie's. And we have public. And this journey is wonderful. Thank you for coming here. And I hope you understood me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am really happy to be here. This is really a privilege. And a little segue, Goldie and I showed together, like, I don't know, 25 years ago. So this is kind of a thrill that we're in the same room. And I want to thank Carlin, Dana, John. It's great to be here. And I have to apologize. I'm going to read this because I'm really bad at memorizing. And I don't trust myself to go off the cuff. I wrote this last night after John asked me if I would say something. And here we go. After a somewhat long hiatus, I am back at making sculpture, and I am working in a new medium. This really excites me to death. I was introduced to bronze casting years ago by a beloved sculptor friend who ran a bronze foundry in Costa Rica. One day while I was visiting, he said, "You need to learn this." So he threw some wax at me and he said, "You're on your own, figure it out." And I did. And it's the first step in building a bronze is to work in wax, which is a very, very difficult medium to manipulate. And it took time. I've been at this maybe for 15 months, learning slowly the whole process. I work at home and at a foundry in Montreal, and have learned the entire process, every step of the way. Some of the process is quite physical, like chopping away at the mold and revealing the sculpture that's inside, and things can go wrong. This one, I realized this is something I could describe. When it was cast, when the bronze was poured in, it didn't reach the fish, which is something it's risky. When you open up that mold, you don't know for sure that it's all going to be perfect. So it just so happened at the foundry there is a master welder, and he built up, it was like real finesse welding, and he built up the tail, and I rescued it. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble. This is a mini-series inspired by photographs that are out there in the public domain. For some reason, all of them contain fish. There's 2 more out there. They all have fish. It could be because I'm a Pisces, which I don't really pay that much attention to, and I'm also an avid fisherman. My dad was a fisherman, my mother fished, so I think that explains the fish. And what else did I want to say? Okay, so this one, and there's 2 more out there. This one was inspired by a photograph I saw on Instagram. And I think it's the whimsy that really caught me. This guy running and with a dog on his shoulder, and the dog had a fish. So that was the inspiration to try and recreate that. And last, my work has always been described as quirky and humorous. I am good with that. I most definitely work towards an audience. I enjoy audience reaction, and I feel my work is pretty accessible. I don't want to be a stranger. I don't want to make art that is hard to understand. That's it. Thank you.
I want to say it's wonderful to be back showing with Carlin Moulton at her amazing gallery that I've always admired from the beginning. We used to show together in her other amazing house on Old Orchard Road, was it? Right. Yeah, when she first came to the county. And ever since Carlin's come to this county, amazing things have happened in the art world, I can tell you that. Brava. Anyhow, today I have 2 works in this show. They're both made of travertine. One's this bear, and the other is a tree over in the window. And they're made of, this is a travertine from Persia, and the other one is a chocolate travertine from Siena. And I think it's in the limestone family, but I don't really know the chemistry in detail. But I just went to Italy to spend time with friends in a studio and worked 1 month, and I knew I only wanted to make 1 sculpture. And when I arrived at this studio, this friend of mine said, "Oh, I have this red stone that you might like." And I said, "Yes, I think I do like that stone." I mean, he knew already that I liked this material. So I had this stone to begin with, but I didn't really know what I was going to make, except it would be perhaps an animal. And I had first thought I'd do a horse. And I worked 1 day in my mind carving this stone as if it's going to be a horse. But what happened was I realized it wasn't high enough, and it wasn't quite the right material to represent what I was going. And so the second day, it was going to be a bear, because it had more, the stone was a little lower and broader. So I thought, the stone told me which direction that I was going to take the sculpture. So I spent, well, every day, but not 8-hour days. I wasn't doing 8-hour days, but it was cold. It can be kind of cold and nasty in November in Italy if the sun's not shining. So after a month, this sort of emerged by a slow process of just having some history with bears, because I maybe done 3 or 4 others at the most, but over a long period of time. It's not like I have a series of doing bears, just that part of what I carve goes into the animal world in a literal way, but most of my work goes into the same world, but in a more ambiguous way. It's just more, they're a little more stylized and a little more what normally people say are abstract. So some of my work goes that way, but some goes in the direction of clearly you know what it's supposed to be in a way. When I first made it, German people would say to me, "Oh, das ist ein Eisbär." Because in Europe, the polar bear is always the ice bear. But he was right, you see, because in its general style, the head is closer to a polar bear than it would be to a regular brown bear or a grizzly bear. There's a sense of this head being actually, so actually the first person who saw it in its most complete form, this German artist, he just turned and said, "Oh, it's an ice bear." And I thought, oh yeah, he's right. And so what we really got is like a female red polar bear in a way. I mean, it's very stylized. It's not meant to be a polar bear at all in any way. I'm just making a joke of its stylized head. So, and then when I was looking up, it was suggested that it should have a title. So I thought, well, he looks like he's looking at the stars to me, so it's called it Stargazer. It's what we all need to be watching, so that we look into the past to today by stargazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.